Fords were pioneers into India, and Ford is a very successful company globally. And they wanted to bring a mid-end car to India. And they figured that the mid-end car would be more cost-effective. If it was more cost-effective, would be able to generate more volume. So a car which was typically selling in the United States at about $20,000, they tried to re-engineer in India, re-engineer for India, sitting in Detroit with Detroit engineers, and figured one way they could bring down, one among many ways they could bring down the cost of the car was to see to it that power windows were removed on half the car, the backside of the car. What they didn't realize that a car at $15,000 in India would be bought by wealthy people, and wealthy people had drivers, chauffeurs. So you provided power windows for the driver, you did not provide power windows for the occupants of the car. And this is an actual case history. And we have a joint venture with General Electric in healthcare system. And we have today 1,500 engineers working for producing products, cardiology equipment, low-end ultrasound equipment, baby warmers, specifically tailored to the emerging markets. And the interesting thing is not only do they cater across the world to emerging markets, whether it be Africa, China, Latin America, but because of the huge demand of value and cost by global customers, including Western customers, is becoming a very interesting re-export market back into the developed world.
Yeah,
Nouriel, come on in.
I think the point was made about the rise of emerging markets. They're going to be a source of high economic growth for the global economy. Then the question is, where are going to be the sources of growth for advanced economies? And here I see four challenges and four sources of trouble. One is demographics. Aging of population reduces potential growth. It's a problem in Japan. It's a problem in Europe. The second one is that you need structural reforms in all advanced economies. Those structural reforms are occurring more slowly and is desirable and optimal. Look at Europe, look at Japan. 3, we need to invest into education, into infrastructure to become more productive and competitive. That's not occurring at the rate it should be. And 4, now we have these sovereign debt problems, large budget deficit, rising stocks of public debt that may be clamping on potential growth. So unless the West and advanced economy address the fundamental problem, it's going to be a big issue.
Question just back here and then at the front. Questions as quick as we can. Thanks. Yeah.
Vincent van Quickenborn, Minister of Economy from Belgium. I like the idea of putting, Sir Martin, Germany in Division 2. Has to do with export to emerging markets, especially China. Well, yesterday some interesting figures were published about China. Actually, that private consumption contributed 3.9% to the total economic growth of 10.3% in 2010 in China. That is the lowest since 2003, and is not, in fact, not fulfilling what Mr. Wen Jiabao and Hu Jintao said when they started as premier and president. So far for rebalancing, I would say. My question to the man known as Nouriel on Twitter is the Chinese state capitalist model in the long term sustainable?
Well, I think that you're pointing out an important problem, that the model of China so far has been one of export-led industrialization and growth based on a cheap currency and relying on net exports and on fixed investment. And consumption has been very low, around 36% of GDP. So the challenge that China is facing is that the U.S. cannot be anymore the consumer of first and last resort, spending more than its income and running ever larger current account deficit, so that China can be the producer of first and last resort, spending less than its income and running ever larger surpluses. And therefore, you need to reduce savings rate and increase consumption. There are structural reasons why the Chinese save a lot, both the corporate sector and the household sector, and why the Chinese don't consume. There is a plan, a 5-year plan about changing that. We'll see. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge that China is going to be facing, to move away from net exports to a greater reliance on consumption and reduction of savings. We'll see whether that can happen.
Yeah, I guess I have to. I guess you're China experts because you can pronounce Hu Jintao and Wen Jiabao very well in Chinese way. And I'm very much impressed. But I do have a slightly different data from yours. The last year, Chinese GDP, if you're looking overall, consumption contributed 47.6%. The fixed capital information still contributed 48.2%, so slightly more than consumption. The exports control the rest of a little bit 3%. If you're looking for the net exports contribution for the GDP growth rate last year, it was negative, because the China current account surplus dropped dramatically from 10.8% 2007 to last year, roughly a little bit of more than 4%. And I'm very positive we'll see the Chinese export surplus were on downside this year and in year forward, because it's very clear China cannot rely on the export growth model. I mean, in 1998, the big lesson for the Asian economies, you cannot rely external capital flow. So the forex piled up. And this crisis gave a big lesson for the Asia emerging markets. You cannot rely on external demand. This is very simple, but until you have been hit badly, you will not take a lesson. Right. So what you see this last year is quite a big change on the export pattern within the emerging Asia as well. We will see further the emerging market go move into the domestic consumption-driven model. Only I concern the U.S. pick it up, need more import. They will cause another issue.
The Chinese consumer has to have some things. For example, healthcare. What we see with our 12,000 people in mainland China is a concern about saving for older life, old age,
parents,
healthcare. And until that is done, and Nouriel referred to the latest 5-year plan that was referred to before, until that is in place, the Chinese consumer is not going to feel secure enough to spend in the way that we in the West would like to see them.
Well, pension and healthcare is all things, but the reform on those things also on the way.
Adam?
Adam Lashinsky with Fortune magazine. Jim, if I heard you correctly, you seem to suggest that the negative tone in the U.S. business community would cause U.S. business leaders to cut down their activity, which strikes me as the equivalent of the saying, well, if you don't play nice with me on the schoolyard, I'm going to take my bat and ball and leave the schoolyard, which, bellyaching notwithstanding, isn't how fiduciaries typically behave. So my question to you is, with Jeff Immelt chairing the President's Jobs Council and the President's more conciliatory tone, are we past that now? And zoom in, if you could comment, how did the Chinese leadership view this spat between the U.S. administration and the U.S. corporate community?
Yeah, well, let me address it first. I wasn't implying to take your bat and ball and go home. I think that the combination of the tenor of discussion around the business community and the uncertainty that existed on a policy level, whether it was the extensive discussions around healthcare, around financial reform, around cap and trade, around card check policy, labor policy, around debt reduction policy, every one of these policy balls that were being juggled, every business leader knew that when the ball hit the table, it would impact them. And the combination of sort of the rhetoric and the policy uncertainty caused companies, I think in many cases, to quite understandably be a little cautious. I do think we're moving in a very positive direction, and I think that on both settling down some of the policy issues and having Jeff Immelt and others work with the administration around this tone, I think we're moving in the right path.
Do you want to comment, Jim?
Well, thanks for the question, but I have to say the first thing is I'm now with IMF, so I consider myself very much an international citizen. I even don't pay for U.S. tax things, and so I'm no longer in the position as a deputy governor in China, and so I'm not properly in the position to answer your question. But as a Washingtonian, I like 1,000 miles away. My sense is, I think Jen laid out uncertainty big issues, but I really see U.S. need a growth strategy.
Mm-hmm. Question right at the front, and then we'll try and squeeze one in at the back. Gentleman right here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Luigi Buttiglione from Bevan Howard Investment Products. Two questions, one on risk and the second one on U.S. policy. Concerning, if I go back to last year, in the end, the so-called Davos consensus, at least with my colleagues, we came back with the impression that the so-called thinkers or the policymakers were a little bit on the pessimistic side, and the corporate sector was more on the optimistic side last year. Well, it proved, if we look at last year's experience, in the end, I would say that the latter group of people were more right than the first one. In the end, last year growth was close to 5% for the world, which is quite a good year. Actually, here I have a bit different statistics from Mr. Zumin. I think that for the year, at the end of last year, world GDP was something like 3% above the previous peak, so it was not a bad. So if we look back forward to this year, now going to the half-empty, half-full glass of Nouriel Roubini, where do you see risk? Do you see risk that actually we could be surprised again on the high side? And I would say, with especially a glance at inflation. And the second question, very quickly, it's about policy in the U.S. What do you think about energy taxes? Because I think the gorilla, as someone said, is the big thing, the U.S. policy. And I think it's something we all discuss, and we'd like to know what you think about that.
Let's just quickly, do you think we're going to be surprised on the upside? I don't think you do you?
Well, I pointed out what could be the upside risk coming from EM, from the fact that the corporate sector is strong, there is a global recovery. But I do worry about the Eurozone. I do worry about commodity prices rising. I do worry about housing and labor market in the United States. I worry about the policy response of China and other countries and how they're going to manage capital inflows. And I also worry about the whole series of, I would say, geopolitical risk. Again, food and social and political instability, Iran, Israel, North, South Korea, terrorism. Look what happened in Moscow the other day, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and even cyber terrorism. So there are lots of things that could go wrong. The markets right now are optimistic. The CEOs are more optimistic. That's a positive, but we should not underestimate there are a number of significant potential downside risks to the global economy.
I don't think corporates were optimistic like this time last year. I think we became more optimistic as we went through the year. Just recount, in 2009, we forecast -2 on our revenues, we did -8. 2010, we said 0, we did 5. A little bit better than 5. This year, we're budgeting 5. I think, I hope, we'll be in line with where it actually turns out. I think this year is the same again as last year, except there will be a move more in our industry, well, in the industries we follow, to BRICS and Next 11. There'll be more rebalancing there and more to digital. Last year, I think, was more about, I call it dead cat bounce, it's a bit unfair, but it was the result of the stimulus. If you put $12 trillion into the world's economy, there has to be a rebound. And that came in 2010. 2011, I think, will be more balanced and more back to where we are. Maybe not the new reality that we were meant to be discussing this morning.
I'll leave everyone with 3 of my takeaways. One, it isn't just India and China, that countries like Bangladesh and Argentina, and even you said Pakistan, are showing remarkable growth. Secondly, keep an eye on Egypt today. And thirdly, Xu Min's comment that inequality is the single biggest problem facing the global economy, rich countries and poor countries alike. It's been a fantastic opening panel. Please thank my panelists very much.